A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
My Weird Prompts is a community-driven initiative exploring how AI can fuel curiosity and uncover the fascinating ways our world works. GPU compute for this podcast is generously provided by Modal. Learn more at modal.com.
So, Herman, 25 years of Wikipedia. January 15, 2026 was the big anniversary, and it is honestly hard to imagine the internet without it. If you search for almost anything, it is the first result. It has become the de facto gold standard for what constitutes a fact in the digital age. But today's prompt from Daniel is asking us to look under the hood, because that gold standard is looking pretty tarnished lately. He is pointing specifically to the systemic collapse of neutrality, using the recent anti-Israel bias controversy as a case study for a much bigger question. Is it even possible to have an objective, crowdsourced encyclopedia at scale, or is the whole project inevitably destined to succumb to rule by mob?
It is the defining epistemic crisis of our time, corn. I am Herman Poppleberry, by the way, for anyone joining us for the first time. This topic is fascinating because it forces us to confront the difference between the legend of Wikipedia and the reality of its governance. The legend is this beautiful democratic meritocracy where the truth emerges from the collective wisdom of the crowd. The reality, especially as we have seen over the last 18 months, is a highly bureaucratic, easily captured system where a small number of dedicated ideologues can effectively rewrite history in real time. We are seeing the utopian dream of the early 2000s hit a very hard, very messy wall of human tribalism.
And we are not just talking about random trolls making minor edits or teenagers changing a celebrity's height for a joke. This has moved into the realm of high-level institutional conflict. You look at the timeline from last year, and it is staggering. In March 2025, the Anti-Defamation League dropped that massive report, Editing for Hate. They identified a core group of about 30 editors who were acting in concert to systematically inject anti-Israel narratives and scrub anything that did not fit a very specific hostile framing. The crazy part was the activity level. These 30 people were up to 18 times more active in internal communications than the average editor. That is not a hobby, that is a full-time campaign. When you have 30 people working with that kind of intensity, they can effectively drown out thousands of casual users.
That activity gap is the key to understanding how the capture happens. Wikipedia operates on the principle of who has the most endurance. It is a war of attrition. If you are a normal person with a job and a family, and you see an inaccuracy on a page, you might fix it once. But if there is a coordinated cell of editors whose entire purpose is to maintain a specific narrative, they will revert your change in seconds. They will outprocess you. They will bury you in citations from their preferred sources. Eventually, the person seeking truth just gives up because they have a life to live, while the ideologue has nothing but time and a mission. It is a structural flaw in the volunteer model. It rewards the obsessed, not necessarily the accurate.
It got so bad that even Jimmy Wales had to step in, right? I remember reading about that in November of last year. He actually went onto the top page for the Gaza genocide article and basically told the editors they were failing their own neutrality standards. When the founder of the site, the man who has spent 2 decades defending the community's autonomy, has to personally intervene to tell his volunteers they are being biased, you know the system is broken down. It was a remarkable admission of failure.
Wales is in an impossible spot because he spent 25 years championing the decentralized model, but he is watching it turn into a weapon. After his intervention, they actually had to lock the edits on that page. Think about the irony there. The encyclopedia anyone can edit became the encyclopedia that the founder had to lock to prevent it from becoming a propaganda sheet. And then you had the Arbitration Committee, or ArbCom, which is like the Supreme Court of Wikipedia. In January of 2025, they issued these rare topic bans on 8 editors. 6 were classified as pro-Palestine and 2 as pro-Israel. but it was a band-aid on a gunshot wound. The House Oversight Committee even launched a formal probe into it last August. When the United States Congress is investigating an encyclopedia for foreign influence and bias, the era of the neutral digital library is officially over.
I want to dig into the mechanism of how this happens, because it is not just about people being mean or biased. It is about the rules themselves being gamed. Wikipedia has this core policy called NPOV, or neutral point of view. On paper, it sounds great. You represent all significant views fairly and without bias. But in practice, NPOV relies entirely on what the community deems a reliable source, and that is where the circular logic starts, isn't it? If you control the list of sources, you control the facts.
The reliable sources notice board is where the real power lies. This is the secret engine room of Wikipedia. If a group of editors can get a specific news outlet or a research institute labeled as unreliable, then any fact cited from that source can be instantly deleted. Over the last few years, we have seen a systematic purge of conservative and pro-Israel sources from the approved list. So, if you are an editor trying to add context to a Middle East article, and you cite a source that hasn't been captured by the prevailing ideological wind, your edit is reverted because you used an unreliable source. Then, the only sources left are the ones that agree with the editors in power. It creates this perfectly sealed feedback loop where the consensus is manufactured by excluding any dissenting data at the source level. It is not that they are lying about what the sources say, it is that they have rigged the game so only certain sources are allowed to speak.
It is a digital version of a velvet rope. You can come in and edit, but only if you use the books we have pre-approved. And if you look at who is holding the rope, the demographics are incredibly skewed. I was looking at the data, and something like 90% of Wikipedia editors are male. Most are Western, college-educated, and under the age of 40. That is a very narrow slice of the human experience. When you have that kind of demographic monoculture, you don't even need a conspiracy to get bias. You just get it naturally because everyone in the room shares the same blind spots and the same cultural assumptions. If 90% of the people writing the history of the world are from the same demographic, the result isn't a global encyclopedia. It is a very long, very detailed reflection of that specific group's worldview.
That demographic skew is a massive factor that people overlook. We often talk about the wisdom of the crowd, but that only works if the crowd is diverse and independent. If the crowd is actually a small, homogeneous group of people who all went to the same kinds of universities and read the same 3 newspapers, you don't get wisdom, you get an echo chamber with a search bar. This is what Larry Sanger, the co-founder who left early on, has been shouting about for years. He argues that the project has completely abandoned neutrality in favor of a left liberal consensus that views itself as the only objective reality. He has even pointed out that on many political topics, Wikipedia doesn't even try to present the other side anymore. It just labels the other side as a conspiracy theory or a fringe view and moves on.
Sanger is an interesting figure because he was there at the beginning. He helped write the original rules, and now he says the site is basically broken. He even launched alternatives like Citizendium, trying to bring experts back into the fold, and more recently, the Encyclopedia of Defenses of Honesty. But they never got the traction. It seems like the network effect of Wikipedia is so strong that even if it is biased, people keep using it because it is convenient. We have traded accuracy for accessibility. We would rather have a fast, biased answer than a slow, nuanced one.
The network effect is the ultimate shield. Because Google and Apple and Amazon all bake Wikipedia results into their search engines and voice assistants, the average person is consuming Wikipedia content without even realizing it. When you ask your phone a question, it is often reading you the lead paragraph of a Wikipedia article. If that lead paragraph has been massaged by 30 coordinated editors to reflect a specific political slant, then that slant becomes the default reality for millions of people. This is why the Heritage Foundation and even people like Elon Musk have started attacking the platform. They recognize that Wikipedia isn't just a website, it is the infrastructure of modern thought. If you capture the infrastructure, you capture the culture.
That brings us to the deeper philosophical question Daniel raised. Is it even possible for any compendium of knowledge to be truly neutral? We tend to think of Wikipedia as this unique modern failure, but if you look back at history, encyclopedias have always been political weapons. Look at the original one, the French encyclopedia from the 18th century. Denis Diderot and Jean Le Rond d'Alembert weren't just trying to collect facts. They were trying to change the way people thought. They were explicitly trying to undermine the authority of the Catholic Church and the French monarchy.
Diderot was very open about it. He called the encyclopedia a war machine. He used cross-references to subvert the text. For example, you might have a very respectful traditional entry on a religious topic, but then a cross-reference would send you to an entry on superstition or ancient myths. It was brilliant, and it was incredibly biased. It was banned by the French crown because they recognized it for what it was, a tool for revolution. So, in that sense, Wikipedia is just continuing a long tradition of using the claim of universal knowledge to advance a specific worldview. The difference is that Diderot was fighting against a centralized monarchy, whereas today the capture of Wikipedia feels like a new kind of decentralized authoritarianism.
The difference is that Diderot didn't pretend he was neutral. He was an Enlightenment philosopher with a clear agenda. Wikipedia's danger is that it claims to be a neutral mirror of the world while acting as a lens. It is the pretense of objectivity that makes the bias so effective. If you know a source is biased, you can account for it. But if the source tells you it is the neutral gold standard, you lower your guard. It is the difference between a campaign pamphlet and a textbook. We are being given campaign pamphlets disguised as textbooks.
There is a chilling comparison to be made with the great Soviet encyclopedia. In the Soviet Union, the encyclopedia was the ultimate authority on truth, which meant it had to be updated every time the political winds shifted. There is a famous story about Lavrenti Beria, the head of the secret police. After he was executed in 1953, the state sent out a notice to all subscribers of the encyclopedia. They were told to take a pair of scissors, cut out the page about Beria, and paste in a new, much longer entry about the Bering Sea that just happened to take up the same amount of space.
That is terrifying. It is literally erasing a person from history with a glue stick.
Wikipedia is the decentralized version of that. Instead of a central state office sending out replacement pages, you have a decentralized mob doing it in real time. If a public figure says something that goes against the consensus, their Wikipedia page is updated within minutes to frame them as a controversial figure or to highlight their alleged failures. It is the same impulse to control the narrative, just distributed across 40,000 editors instead of one central committee. And because it is decentralized, it is much harder to hold anyone accountable. Who do you sue? Who do you fire? The Wikimedia Foundation just points to the community, and the community is an anonymous mass.
But isn't the argument that the crowd eventually fixes it? That the self-correcting nature of the site means that over a long enough timeline, the truth wins out? That was the big selling point for years.
That is the theory, but the Harvard Business School study from a few years ago found something very different. They compared Wikipedia to Britannica and found that while Wikipedia does have more revisions, those revisions don't always lead to less bias. In many cases, the bias actually hardens over time as the most persistent editors drive everyone else away. On highly polarized topics like the Israel-Palestine conflict, there is no middle ground where everyone agrees. There is only a battle of attrition. The side that cares more and has more people willing to spend 16 hours a day on the site is the side that wins. That is not truth. That is just dominance. The Harvard study showed that while bias decreases on technical or scientific topics with more edits, on political topics, more edits often just mean a more polished version of a specific slant.
And that is why the Israeli context is such a perfect stress test. It is a topic where everyone has a strong opinion. The stakes are existential, and the information war is just as intense as the physical war. If the Wikipedia model cannot produce a neutral article on Israel, can it produce a neutral article on anything that actually matters? Can it be neutral on climate change, or COVID-19, or the 2024 election?
I would argue the answer is no. On any topic where there is a genuine disagreement about values or policy, the Wikipedia model will inevitably drift toward the consensus of its most active demographic. This is why you see such a disparity between how certain political figures are treated. A conservative politician might have a massive section on their page dedicated to controversies, while a liberal politician with a similar record might have those same controversies buried in a single sentence or omitted entirely. It is all about the framing. It is the weaponization of history. If you control the definitions of words, you control the outcome of the debate. If you can define Zionism as a colonial movement on Wikipedia, you have already won the argument before it even starts.
So if the crowdsourced model is failing and the expert-curated model, like Britannica, is essentially dead because it cannot keep up with the speed of the internet, where does that leave us? Are we just entering an era where objective knowledge is a myth and everyone just has their own version of the facts?
We are in the era of epistemic fragmentation. The idea of a single authoritative source that everyone trusts is gone. And maybe that is a good thing in a way. Maybe we were too naive to trust a single website with the keys to reality. The takeaway for the digital native has to be a radical kind of skepticism. You have to treat Wikipedia as a starting point, a place to find initial links and names, but never as the final authority. We need to stop treating it as a judge and start treating it as a witness. And like any witness, it has a perspective, it has biases, and it might be lying to you.
I think one of the most practical things people can do is actually look at the talk pages. Most people don't even know they exist. Every Wikipedia article has a discussion tab behind it where the editors are arguing. If you want to see the bias in action, read the talk page for any controversial topic. You will see the raw, unvarnished ideological battles. You will see editors accusing each other of being bots or shills. It is eye-opening because it strips away the polished, neutral-sounding prose of the main article and shows you the messy, biased human beings who are actually writing it. It is like looking at the kitchen of a restaurant. You might not like what you see, but you will definitely understand the meal better.
That is the source check heuristic. If you see a massive amount of conflict on the talk page, you should assume the article itself is a temporary truce, not an objective truth. Another thing to look at is the edit history. If a page is being reverted every few minutes, you are looking at a live fire zone. You shouldn't trust a single word on that page until the dust settles, and even then you have to ask who was left standing. The winner of an edit war isn't the person who is most right. It is the person who didn't have to go to sleep.
It really comes down to epistemic humility. We have become so used to having the answer in our pocket that we have forgotten how hard it is to actually know something. Knowledge isn't just a commodity you download from a server. It is something you have to evaluate and weigh. Daniel's prompt really hits on the fact that we have outsourced our thinking to an algorithm and a volunteer army, and we are now seeing the consequences of that. We have traded the difficulty of research for the ease of a consensus that might be entirely manufactured.
It is a warning about the fragility of truth in a digital environment. We thought the internet would be this grand library where all the world's knowledge was preserved. Instead, it has become an etch-a-sketch where the most aggressive person gets to shake the board. If we want to move past this, we might need a new kind of infrastructure. Maybe something built on blockchain where every edit is permanent and every editor's bias is transparently tracked. Or maybe we just need to go back to reading books by people with actual names and reputations on the line, rather than anonymous editors like SlimeMold88 or whatever their handle is.
There is something to be said for accountability. When you read a book by a historian, you know who they are, you know their background, and you can judge their work based on their reputation. On Wikipedia, the anonymity is a feature that has become a bug. It allows people to act with a level of aggression and bias that they would never dare to use if their real name was attached to it. It is the same problem we see on social media, just dressed up in the language of an encyclopedia.
And let's not forget the role of the Wikimedia Foundation itself. They are the nonprofit that runs the whole thing. They have an annual budget of over $150 million. They are not some scrappy group of volunteers in a basement anymore. They are a major institutional player. And when the ADL report came out, their response was basically to dismiss it as problematic. They are protecting the brand because the brand is worth billions in terms of cultural influence. They have a vested interest in maintaining the illusion of neutrality even as the reality crumbles. It is a classic case of institutional capture. Once an organization becomes that powerful, it attracts the very people who want to use that power for their own ends.
The ideologues don't go to Conservapedia or Citizendium because there is no power there. They go to Wikipedia because that is where the people are. They go where they can have the most impact on the global consciousness. It is the ultimate high ground in the information war. If you can change the definition of a conflict on Wikipedia, you change how it is taught in schools and how it is reported in the media.
So, what is the path forward? If you are a student today or a professional who needs accurate information, you have to become your own editor. You have to look at multiple sources, especially those that disagree with each other. If Wikipedia says one thing, go find a source that says the opposite and try to understand why they disagree. Use the citations at the bottom of the Wikipedia page to go to the original documents. Often, you will find that the Wikipedia summary has subtly twisted what the original source actually said. It is a lot more work, but it is the only way to avoid being manipulated.
It is about reclaiming our intellectual agency. We can't just be passive consumers of the feed. We have to be active auditors of the information we receive. The tragedy of the last 25 years is that we stopped doing the cross-examination. We just accepted the testimony as gospel. But, as the Israel controversy has shown, that gospel is full of holes.
My guess is we will see a move toward AI-curated knowledge bases, but that just moves the problem one level deeper. Then we have to ask who trained the AI and what data they used. If the AI is trained on Wikipedia, it will just reproduce the same biases at lightning speed. We are seeing that already with some of the large language models. They have hallucinations that just happen to align perfectly with the prevailing political consensus of the people who built them. There is no technological fix for a human problem. The problem is that we want a shortcut to the truth, and there are no shortcuts.
That is a sobering thought. The more we try to automate or crowdsource the truth, the more we seem to lose it. It reminds me of the failure of the alternatives Daniel mentioned. They failed because they were just as biased in the other direction, or they lacked the scale. It seems like we are stuck with this giant flawed monument because it is too big to fail and too useful to ignore.
It is the digital equivalent of a massive, crumbling cathedral. It is beautiful in its own way, and it holds a lot of history, but the roof is leaking and the foundation is shifting. You can still go inside, but you should probably wear a hard hat and keep one eye on the exit.
I think that is a good place to wrap up the core of this. It is a fascinating look at how a utopian project can be brought down by the very things it tried to transcend. Human nature, politics, and the sheer persistence of people with an axe to grind. It is a reminder that the price of knowledge is eternal vigilance. We cannot outsource our understanding of the world to a website, no matter how convenient it is.
Well said, Corn. It has been a pleasure to dig into the fraying edges of the internet's favorite encyclopedia with you.
Likewise, Herman, if you want to dig deeper into the shifting political landscapes that are driving these edit wars, I definitely recommend checking out episode 1245, The Fraying Bond, where we talked about the relationship between Israel and the global diaspora. It provides a lot of the context for why these battles are so intense right now.
And episode 981, The Opinion Gap, is another great one. It covers the statistical earthquake in public opinion that is essentially the fuel for the fire we are seeing on these talk pages.
Before we go, we have to give a huge thanks to our producer, Hilbert Flumingtop, for keeping the gears turning behind the scenes. And a big thanks to Modal for providing the GPU credits that power the generation of this show. We literally couldn't do this without that compute.
This has been My Weird Prompts. If you are enjoying the show, do us a favor and leave a review on your podcast app. It really does help other people find these deep dives. You can also find us at myweirdprompts.com for the full archive and all the ways to subscribe.
We will be back soon with another prompt. Until then, keep questioning the consensus and checking those talk pages.
See ya.
Goodbye.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My Weird Prompts, that's the close from sloth.